Hello and welcome, everybody. Let me try that again. Hello and welcome, everybody, to my latest live broadcast. It's Tuesday. It's the 22nd of August. It's 2023. My name is Kerry Holzman. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. And got a pretty interesting and different show for you laid out for today. A couple shows back, I asked you guys what you wanted to see more of. Several of you wanted to see more networking routers and networking related items. And I reached out to our good friends over at EnGenius, and they sent a little bit of everything here. And I'm not exactly sure what we received other than some access points. And there's some cloud tie-in with some of this. And I haven't done any research on this. I thought we would go through this together as sort of a discovery. And then of any of these products that shows the most interest in the response that I get from you guys, then we'll do a follow-up of actually putting it into, deploying it and actually using it to see. I'm in a situation here in Studio B where I require a wireless bridge. And the wireless bridge I've got is, it's making do, but I didn't intend to use it this long, and I certainly like a more powerful one. And well, we didn't get a bridge in this setup here. There are some things that might be helpful for my situation, trying to get internet from one building to another. Now, everything here, I believe, is all indoor or indoor use. And EnGenius, they make a lot of networking products specifically for businesses. That's their bread and butter. But the business solutions that they offer may also do quite well for a home use scenario. And I find the EnGenius equipment is far less intimidating to configure than, say, Ubiquiti or other brands at that level of product development, for that field. And I thought we'd look at it together and, well, we'll each come to our own conclusions over what we've got. Product descriptions and links are in the video description below this video. I want to give a shout out and a thank you for those of you who have contributed. Well, you guys have been hanging out in the chat waiting for the show to start. Several of you offered up, there's a word for it, contributions, but no, I was thinking of, it'll come to me. Super chat contributions in the chat room. Alan Lindas kicks us off with $7.77. He says, Kerry, I'm actually early for a change today. Here's my early fee. Sorry, the super chat contribution is just easier to do than an Amazon gift card. It's all good, and I appreciate any contribution given anyway. So thank you, Alan, for your continued support. Rick Lakes, joining us from Minnesota, contributes $10 via Super Chat. Says, hello, Kerry. Hi, Rick. Paul O'Brien, joining us from Ireland, offers €2 as a peace offering for Mammy. And Planet Cryos, with a $5 Super Chat, says, this is where to be, people. Give a thumbs up for Kerry. Right on. Thank you, Planet Cryos, my biggest cheerleader. And thank you, Paul O'Brien, of course. Cheers, mate. All right, now let me go to my screen set up here. Yeah, there I am. And as you can see, splayed out in front of me here, I've got a few boxes with EnGenius markings on them of various equipment. These little white boxes, if you notice some of the descriptions in the video description, some of these product descriptions below the video say they don't come with power supplies, and that's what's in these little white boxes are the power supplies that are sold separately. For some of the products, right? We've got 3 power supplies, so 3 of these items, apparently you have to provide a power supply for, and I'm guessing it's these 3 right here, would be my guess. These are power over Ethernet adapters. This is ideal for security systems, cameras, where you don't want to run a separate power cable to the camera. So the idea is with security cameras, the tough part of deploying them is getting the cabling done. So people are like, I'll just get wireless. Okay, you could get a wireless security camera, but you still have to provide power to it. And, Wi-Fi can be a little flaky, can be a little finicky, it's subject to interference. So if you're going to run power to it anyway, why not use that same power cable to deliver your Ethernet, or use your Ethernet cable, in this case, to deliver the power. Then you don't have to be wireless. You've got the security and performance of wired, the resiliency and reliance of wired connection that does both carry the data and provide power for low power usage items, like in some cases, wireless bridges. In most cases, you'll commonly see it in maybe some wireless access points that are put up in the ceiling of hotels, of businesses, for example, or again, security cameras. And then of course they make them in a 1 gig version here and a 2.5 gig version. So I'm not quite sure where I would deploy these personally, but it's nice to know that you can buy them individually. So if you have bought items that have the option that you no longer have to power them with a power adapter, but they have the option of being powered over Ethernet, you can remove one cable. And it does make installation of things like with a camera. If you had to run a power cable, let's say over your garage to put a camera facing down at the front of your house, the front of your driveway, where are you going to get power from? And secondly, when you do power, you have to follow city code because it's a fire hazard. And you really need a qualified electrician to do it. On the other hand, networking cables, it's low power cable. So like telephone cable, you don't have to be certified to run that stuff. In most places, at least here in the USA, you can run that yourself. Doesn't really matter. And because it's carrying low voltage, it's not the same as high voltage power. So the same restrictions don't apply. You have to be aware of what causes interference in networking communications. So you don't want to run it parallel to a power line. Try to avoid crossing over or running alongside fluorescent lighting. Things like that you'll be like, how come I can't get a gigabit connection on my wired? It only shows 100 megabit no matter what I do. Because you ran your wire somewhere where it's getting interference and it can't establish that higher speed. The higher speed it goes, the more sensitive it is to outside interference. So as you can imagine, when you get up to 2.5 gig or 5 gig or 10 gig, I don't even know that they make those with power over Ethernet, to be honest. You might need all the wires to go to those speeds, but 2.5 gig and 1 gig are pretty similar in what their requirements are and what their distances are. I'm not an expert in this level of equipment, so we'll sort of go through this. As I mentioned, it's kind of a discovery. And I want you to join me on that discovery so we can learn it together. We can be introduced to it together. And we can each evaluate it according to our own value system and our own needs. For some of you, some of this equipment, you'd have no use for it. And for others, you'd say, oh my gosh, that's the piece of equipment I've been waiting for. Didn't know it existed. So these videos are live, unscripted, and unrehearsed. And I have done absolutely no background on any of these items. I'm sure there may be some YouTube videos out for these items by other creators. I don't know. I didn't want to bias my review. I want my thoughts to be my own. And I might get some of it wrong, and that's okay. All right. Hello, everybody. All my members with the gold badges. Thank you for joining me today. All my friends in blue. And those of you, you're going to, if you're new here, if you're not familiar, you're going to see a lot of members with their names in blue. The reason for this, these are regular members. These are folks who come into the channel and join us during a live stream often. If you also join us in the chat room during a live stream often, so you're participating in the chat room in a kind, supportive way, I will start to recognize your name. And when I do, I will turn you blue. It's not something you pay for. It's just something that you get by proving that you're not a drive-by. You're somebody who's going to stick around. You want to be a part of this incredible community. Hopefully make some friendships here. That's why so many people have jumped into the chat room so early before the show starts, so they have a chance to talk with each other. This may be the only place where they can communicate with each other, and some real friendships in real life have been made here, including many of my own, but many of the members here have become friends, and can't have too many friends. So if you're a kind person, please pop in the chat room to say hello during the broadcast. It's really easy. It doesn't matter what social or lack of social experience you've had in the past. This is not like other internet communities. You will be welcome here as long as you are nice. So all you have to do is say hello. That's all it's to say. All right. Let me see what's happening in the chat room here. The Greenius says his cameras are PoE and he loves it. Yeah, they're very commonly used. Greg M said Greg Salazar found out he was not allowed to run his own cable drops in the new home in Florida. Yeah, so I guess Greg Salazar's having a custom home built. And it's going to be subject to inspections by the city at certain stages. So it's probably best that Greg doesn't do it, regardless. But yes, different regions and different areas will have different rules in that regard. Usually low power cabling doesn't require any certifications or inspections. However, there are exceptions, and new construction is something you don't want to toy with, because you're going to really upset the construction crew if you screwed it up and the inspector says you can't continue this construction until you get this wiring addressed, issue addressed, and now it's going to start costing you more money than if you would have just paid it licensed technician to do it for you. So stuff like that, you're dealing with $1 million in a house. Doesn't make sense to save a few $100 or a couple $1,000 on some cable runs. And those cable runs are super easy because when the walls aren't up yet, you're just got the frame of the house, the 2x4s. It's nothing to run them. So it shouldn't be a very expensive job. James Bond wants to know what's your favorite kind of pizza. Well, that's a random question. I'll tell you what, guys, let's please keep it to, let's talk about networking. This is a dedicated video I am making for EnGenius to cover their products. And if you have networking related questions, or if you have EnGenius product questions, I'll do my best to provide answers or point you to where you can find the answer. And of course, always watch the chat room for answers to your questions, because many of our members here are different experiences and may be more knowledgeable in certain areas than I am, or they may have a different perspective that might align better with you or might make more sense to you than mine. So don't dismiss the options and solutions that are being offered to you by our wonderful members of our community. Camera Girl did the thumbnail for today's video. Look like she's fishing for compliments in the chat room. Shane Perkins says low voltage generally fall under an electrical license and generally requires a license. Well, again, or in my experience, and I used to run cabling, a license wasn't required as far as I know, in Maricopa County. However, certainly doesn't hurt to have one. And your home isn't going to be inspected unless you tell the city you're doing it. But when you have a home built, obviously permits have to be applied for, and you're going to be under the scrutiny of the city until that final sign off where the house is allowed to be inhabited. At that point, you likely aren't going to receive any more inspections unless it's addressed through a complaint or a permit application. So in that regard, it's your own call. John Paul Bacon said Wi-Fi 7 has started to come out, hasn't it? When is widespread availability expected? We don't have any Wi-Fi 7 network interface cards. We have a handful of Wi-Fi 7 routers. That's it for right now. You likely won't see any Wi-Fi 7 in mass, in bulk production, for another at least 6 months. Put us out around April, I would guess, of 2024. I think we'll start seeing it. And by April of 2025, it should just be a commonplace thing that we no longer look at special. It'd be a common thing like Wi-Fi 6E. So the rollout on Wi-Fi 7's been slow. And I don't think we're going to see anything the rest of this year. So likely it'll all start happening next year. Early, mid, or late, I can't tell you, but I'm suspecting, I'm just guessing, probably around spring. That would be my guess. What's the benefit of Wi-Fi 7 over the current version? Well, Wi-Fi 7 is going to really help you most if you're connecting a lot of devices, but there is no benefit to Wi-Fi 7 if the devices are not Wi-Fi 7. So basically, if you're connecting, if you have older Wi-Fi equipment, an old laptop, and old, Internet of Things, an old Wi-Fi thermostat, they're not going to see any benefit to Wi-Fi 7. But if you have other Wi-Fi 7 devices connecting with Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 7's ability to communicate with multiple devices simultaneously is far better than that of Wi-Fi 6E, which was better than Wi-Fi 5. So basically, whether or not there's a benefit to it really depends on the equipment you're connecting to it and how much equipment you're connecting. And we'll talk more about Wi-Fi 7 when that becomes closer to being released. Because anything we talk about today, you're not likely going to retain when the Wi-Fi 7 equipment really starts rolling out and becoming standard next year. So I suggest we save this discussion. Let's just put a pin in that one, and we'll come back to it next year. And when we have some actual products and can test and demonstrate, it'll be much easier to understand what I'm saying when I can demonstrate it at the same time. Basically, every version of Wi-Fi that has a bigger number is better. And by better, I mean it's going to be faster, handle more devices, have better throughput, have better range, just in general. So if you just want the gist, without having to watch any video or read any articles, anytime you see a new Wi-Fi standard, Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 8, Wi-Fi 9, just know, in general, longer range, faster data paths, multiple data paths simultaneously, more than the previous version. Sometimes there's added security as well. And, to get down into the specifics then, obviously you would have to have some other device matching that Wi-Fi standard to reach those benefits. Anything less than that will still maintain the benefits of that version. So Wi-Fi 7 is backwards compatible to Wi-Fi 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, assuming there was such a thing. But yeah, even the original 802.11b can connect to Wi-Fi 7, but it won't be any more secure, it won't have any better range, and it won't be any better security. It's not going to be any faster. You got to remember that, well, the range of the router may go further. The range of the device returning. So let's say this tablet, for example. If we don't upgrade the Wi-Fi in this tablet, which we can't do anyway, then it's quite possible you're in a situation where you have a powerful router where you're getting the signal, but you're not able to send the signal all the way back because your unit that you're receiving from, your terminal, if you will, or whatever your endpoint, doesn't have a Wi-Fi signal strong enough to reach. So it'd be like if we were at opposite ends of a big field and I had a bullhorn. I said, "Can you hear me?" into the bullhorn. And you said yes, but you did not have a bullhorn. I can't hear your answer. Kind of like that. So all equipment to receive the benefits of any Wi-Fi standard, the equipment that you're connecting must all match the same Wi-Fi if you're expecting those results. Is there health effects with Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi is a radio signal. So your eyeballs cannot see the radio waves. There may be some animals that can see radio waves. They can't tell us. But your visual, just like your audio, your ears can only hear 20 hertz to 20,000 kilohertz, 20,000 hertz, generally speaking. Obviously, there's some people that are a bit different, but the vast majority of people, that's your standard hearing range, 20 to 20,000. And much the same way you have a visual spectrum, you cannot see everything. You can't see infrared. You cannot see, there's a whole bunch of the spectrum you can't see. But the same signal that Wi-Fi uses is the same signal that's been blasted into your body from radio and television signals, from airplanes communicating with radio towers, emergency services, CB and ham radio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all just different frequencies of the same RF radio frequency. And your body has been blasted with them since you were born. Really no different than that. Now, obviously, if you are going to be too close to something that's putting out a very high frequency radio signal, there are potential health concerns, but we're talking about super high levels like an MRI machine or something, where people's exposure to that is going to be very limited and very much controlled in a safe way. This home stuff is very, very low power. So the range of the router, because it's so limited, is because the Federal Communications Commission requires these companies to stay within a certain amount of power for health reasons. And so for that matter, for that reason, there's no health concern. I guess if you're sticking a router under your pillow at night powered on and sticking your brain against it every single night for 10 hours or 8 hours, for 6 hours, however long you stay in bed, who does that? I don't think that would be healthy. I don't think it's healthy to have a cell phone attached to the side of your head. That's also using RF, it's using Bluetooth, it's using cellular data. So, and you're putting it right up against your head. Most people are. A lot of people wear a Bluetooth earbud that's going right into their ear canal. I would think that you're getting a higher dose because you're right next to the sending and receiving unit next to your head. The power output of it is limited, but your distance to it, the part that I find kind of amusing is I'll hear people say, "Oh, Wi-Fi, it's not safe. It's not good for your health." But they're eating a Twinkie and smoking a cigarette while they're telling me this. So, for me, I don't really take that stuff too seriously. Under normal conditions, we are not seeing an abundance of people starting to die now because of Wi-Fi. So these conspiracy theories, and this is all related to just a lack of education. And if you really are concerned, if you study electrical engineering, you can go to a community college. You might even be able to take some online courses to really understand how this works. And then that could alleviate your fears, because your fears are basically FEAR, false expectations appearing real. And it's the lack of having the proper information that you're filling with your imagination, or other people's imagination that they're typing online is feeding into your imagination. And you're choosing to believe it, or at least wonder if what this rando is typing on the internet is real. But the fact of the matter is there's enough independent journalism out there. The internet is worldwide. So if there was any big health concern, we'd certainly be aware of it, and we'd see it around us. We'd witness it firsthand. So at this point, we've been around AM and FM radios our whole lives, television signals our whole lives. They always told us growing up, don't sit too close to the TV. But that wasn't for the radio signals. That was for the radiation the TV screen, the CRT would put off. Also, you block the TV if you're sitting in front of it. Back in those days, the console sat on the floor. Kids would sit in front of it, bowl of cereal. And the adults are like, you make a better door than a window. Move away from the TV. So Martin Wolford says routers usually transmit less than 100 milliwatts. That may not mean something to somebody who doesn't know what a watt is or a milliwatt, what that translates to. Usually if people understand what you just said, then they would already have enough education to know it's not potentially. It really isn't. Jim KJ3N said he's been a ham radio operator for over 30 years, and he's exposed to frequencies from AM broadcast to just below the microwave bands. It's had zero effect. Big dogs landing on my face. I don't know what that means. Some ham radio operators would also have boosters, illegal frequency boosters, and CB radio. Forget, they had a name for those. Jim can probably tell me what they were called. I couldn't afford one back when I was a kid playing with CB radios. Steve Mercure says linear amplifier. No, they had a name. They had a like a slang term for what they were. But you think about holding this thing next to your head, or you keep it in your back pocket. And if you're somebody who's always on it all the time, there may be some concern about anything you do all the time. There's moderation in all things. It doesn't matter if you're drinking water. If you drink too much water, you could die. You can get water poisoning from your body being unable to process. So, in everything in life, people these days, they swing to ultimatums. They go from one end to the other end. Nobody seems to know where the middle is anymore. It's always ultimatums now with people, at least the vocal people on the internet. So, if you talk about a security system, they'll say, yeah, but it doesn't prevent a break-in. Well, nothing can really prevent a break-in, but alarms and other anti-theft devices are there as deterrents. They're not as a guarantee that this can't happen. It's just less likely going to happen if you put deterrence in the way of the thief. Thieves are lazy. They don't want to work. That's why they're thieves. The minute you put an obstacle in their path, that's going to require more effort. Even if the item you've got is far more valuable than another item that is not secured in any way, the thief will almost always take the unsecured, less valuable item rather than actually do any work to get around the deterrent. So in much the same way, all of this technology is there to help us, but it's not meant, none of it is meant for us to essentially become one with. Like, if you have a phone attached to your ear most of the waking hours of the day, or even a Bluetooth device, day after day, you never take any days off, and it's there every day, and that's just your thing, you're likely going to have hearing problems, you're going to have ear-related problems. That's just damage over time. And then with regards to any sort of RF frequency, who's to say, right? It kind of depends on the device and how it's being used. So I would suggest that the answer to your question isn't to avoid it entirely, because you cannot avoid radio signals. You've been surrounded by them, whether you realize it or not. The satellites are beaming signals down constantly. So all of a sudden now, you read something online and it's like, oh no, I should be worried. No. That's just how good life is for people in the world today, that we have to make up stuff now to be afraid of, because life is too easy. But I think if you use the technology the way that it is intended, it's there to enhance the quality of your life and should not cause harm. But look, a table saw is very useful if you are cutting wood, but it'll also take a finger or an appendage by mistake if you're careless. So everything that's built to help can be built, or utilized rather, in a way to destroy. Cars are not meant to be driven while intoxicated, for example, and within speed limits for various reasons, depending on road conditions, weather, vehicle condition, driver ability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we have these rules. And I think as long as we stay within them, around them, we're going to be just fine. You're going to die anyway. Okay. Well, aren't you going to feel stupid if you die from nothing? There's no health concern here. Again, it would have to be pretty extreme. And I'd say that's not an example of the way most people use the technology. Bob R said, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Mm-hmm. And so if the question you've got to ask yourself is, does the technology make my life, while I'm living it, more enjoyable or easier? Does it enhance the quality of my life? If you feel it doesn't enhance the quality of your life, don't use it, right? And if you feel, health concerns, it still won't stop you from getting diabetes or cancer or any one of a million different diseases, from Parkinson's and Alzheimer's to dementia and being hit by a bus from a guy who's drinking and smoking and on his cell phone. So in that way, I suppose cell phones can kill you when drivers are busy texting instead of paying attention to the road. And then that car strikes you and kills you. In that case, I would say yes, those radio frequencies are quite dangerous to your health. But there's nothing you can control with what other people do. So you just have to look out for yourself and do what you think is. So I thought we'd go over this equipment that EnGenius has sent, because EnGenius makes some really unique solutions to networking issues that we have, particularly in business, but not uncommon. We find some of these issues in homes, whether it's range or wanting to have your own cloud service. Maybe you don't trust Dropbox or Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive. Maybe you don't want to pay for it. Whatever your reasoning is, maybe you want your own cloud that you can access just like Google Drive or Dropbox, but you want to own it. You want to have maintain control of it. Well, EnGenius makes solutions for that. And that's very common in business, especially in businesses where there are corporate secrets, or we're talking about attorneys, we're talking about doctors, where things have to be kept under their control as much as possible. So by being able to control it yourself, you have control over the level of security instead of relying on a third party. That being said, there are third-party options out there that are compliant with FINRA and HIPAA compliance regulations, so that you could outsource it. But some people just want the control. And if you want the control, then of course you take on the responsibility of securing it and keeping it secured regularly. That falls on your shoulders and your shoulders alone. But also means that nobody else will have access to the data unless you gave them access, or unless you drop the ball on the security and ignorantly opened it up to the internet to take. So these products are for people that are at least very familiar. I would say at the very least average of understanding networking. None of these products are for beginners who've never set up a network before. I would recommend EnGenius or Ubiquiti to somebody like my mother, who doesn't really understand how any of it works. But if you even have sort of just an average baseline understanding of what a router does and how it works, what an access point is and how Wi-Fi works in general, then this stuff should be pretty easy for you to figure it out. John Williams wants to know, are any of my clients using these Wi-Fi devices? These devices, as I said in the beginning of the video, I have not seen any of these. I have no experience with any of these. So these were sent to me from EnGenius. My clients' Wi-Fi solutions were put in place long before these were invented. All the stuff you see here wasn't invented, so it wasn't an option. My clients already have their solutions for now. Will my clients adopt some of these pieces of equipment in the future, or will they adopt a different piece of equipment from EnGenius that isn't out yet, that hasn't been invented yet? Who's to say? But I can tell you that EnGenius is a well-respected manufacturer in business solutions, networking business solutions. They're not new to the game. They're not coming from AliExpress. You're getting legit, proper networking equipment on a business level. And that regards support and certifications. So I would love if one of my clients were using one of these devices, because I'd love to see how it is to work with day by day, see what its stability, reliability, or any issues are that crop up that you can only learn by living with it. So today it's just an introduction. We're going to unbox each one, take a look at what it is. We'll pull up the Amazon site for each product and read what EnGenius says about it. I can almost guarantee that everything that EnGenius says about it on Amazon or on EnGenius's website is 100% factual. I can pretty much guarantee that none of this equipment works faster than EnGenius says it does. But how it works for you, it really depends with any networking equipment that's Wi-Fi. It's very dependent on your environment, what the building is made of, how far the range is that you're trying to achieve, what sort of speeds you're trying to achieve, what kind of and how much wireless equipment are you trying to connect, where have you placed the Wi-Fi device? Is it in the middle or is it off to one side of a building? Wi-Fi device sends its signal in 360-degree bubble. And if you place that bubble in the middle of your home or the middle of your office, you're going to get the best, most optimized coverage. But if you place that bubble off to the edge of against one of the walls of the building, and it's an outdoor, let's say it's a wall it's an insulated wall. So in other words, indoor walls like this wall behind me would not have insulation in it. But the walls along the sides, they face the outdoors. Those walls have insulation. Now, if you take a Wi-Fi router and you stick it up against the corner of your house, now you're up against two outdoor facing walls. That means that 360-degree bubble, only half of it's going into your house. The other half is going out to your neighbors, your backyard, etc. Maybe even front yard, depending on which corner of the house or building you've placed it in. And so placement is going to play a key role in kind of performance you're going to get from the unit. And if some people in some cases don't have a choice, they have to place the router over in a corner. At that point, that's where access points can come in, or mesh routers, as the case may be, depending on what it is you're wanting to connect and how many things you're wanting to connect. Hotels, for example, will use access points throughout typically the hallways, sometimes in each room. If you look up, you'll notice a little box with antennas. Sometimes have to find it. They're pretty good at, they're not hidden, but they're sort of not in your general line of vision. Because I'm a nerd, I usually look for it when I'm in a hotel. I'll look up in the ceiling, and as I'm walking down the hall to the room, if it's a motel where the doors are all facing a parking lot and it's just outside, and every room has a door that goes outside, you'll usually see the Wi-Fi router up along the eave. So, and in some cases, I've seen some hotels where they have different, they got a Linksys router over here, they've got a D-Link router over there, and as you walk down the hall, you'll see they've just kind of added them and piecemealed them together. And usually those kind of hotels don't have the best Wi-Fi. So let's see. Sean Flynn wants to know, are there any advantages to using your own router instead of using a cable provider's router? I plan on using their router as the modem and then bridging to my router. So when it comes to modems, you can buy your own modem if you want to. That'll save you the rental fee. You can call your cable company and ask them which modems they recommend. You might need to be specific because they might say, well, we have too many to mention. When I called my cable company, I said, I want to buy a Motorola or ARRIS, A-R-R-I-S, ARRIS modem. Do you certify any of those on your network? And they said, yes, we have one Motorola and one ARRIS. And I said, would you give me the model number, please? And I took my pen and paper and I wrote down what they told me. And then I set it back just to confirm, because it's a lot of random numbers and letters. This is what you said? Yes. Okay. And then I go on Amazon and I price it, I buy it. And then I don't have to pay the modem rental fee anymore. But if there's ever an internet problem, the first thing the cable company tells you is, are you using our router? Are you using our modem? No. Well, we're very limited in what we can do to help you, because you bought your own, you support yourself. If we have to send a technician out and it turns out the problem is in your house, we're going to bill you for it. If the problem is actually on our side, then we take care of it. Do you want to set up an appointment under those conditions? If you are renting your equipment from the cable company, then in almost all cases, If there's a problem, they're held accountable to it where they don't bill you for it. So in the case of a router, some cable companies combine the modem and the router into one. And you can often reach out to your cable company and say, hey, can I just take this back and get the modem only? Or you can put the router into bridge mode to add your own router. So in many cases, you could simply plug a new router into your cable company's router and you'll get double network address translation. But for most people, it won't have any impact. Depends on how you use the machine. But doing it the right way, you would bridge them. And in my opinion, doing it the right way is you'd only have one router regardless. So pros and cons. You can effectively think of that modem/router rental fee as support insurance, so that when you call for support, they don't have a reason to say we can't help you. But if you'd rather save the $15 a month or whatever it is and buy your own modem and router, you're on your own for support unless, there's something down that they can confirm. But if they say everything looks good on our side, the problem is somewhere on your end, that's on you. If your modem goes out, your router goes out, they're not going to diagnose that for you. And if you require them to, they come out to your house and it turns out to be your equipment, they're going to bill you for that visit. So is one better than the other? That's for each of us to decide. James Bond said the routers ISP give you are garbage. Well, once again, if you're a professional chef, you might say the food McDonald's serves you is garbage and turn your nose up at it. But if you're not somebody who's a foodie, you'd be like, well, I know it's not good for me, but who said I was eating because it was good for me? People that think an ISP's provided router is garbage is not a normal computer owner. These are people that are above average with regards to how they use the equipment. And it does not represent the majority of computer owners, most of which they have no idea how this stuff works. And if you made it better, they wouldn't be able to tell. So just bear that in mind. So that's why I say each of us on our own has to understand what we expect. What are our expectations? How do we use the equipment? And then, of course, for everybody else to introduce the equipment, to explain to them what it is and what it does, because, well, they may not understand it today, they might at least get the gist of it and still not be interested, or actually go, I might want to look more into that and see if I could set something like that up in my house. And that's our goal here, right? It's not to define something as being right for any of you. It's to provide you with information so that you can decide what's right for you. It is not your place to tell other people what's right for them. I mean, unless they specifically ask you, you have no idea what's right for them. You don't, unless it's somebody you know really well. But even then, usually I see people get it wrong. They only think about what they value, and they place their values onto other people. They don't realize they're doing it. So I think everybody deserves to have freedom of choice. And in order to make the best decision, you need the most amount of information to gather so that you can weigh it and evaluate it uniquely the way you do. So you do you. And unless you're being paid to consult, unless you're being specifically asked to assist, it's highly unlikely your opinions will apply to anybody else. Okay, so that's why I'm not here to tell you that this is better than that. I'm here to say, this is what you're getting for the money. This is what it can do. Whether or not you see any advantage to that, that's up to you to decide. Or whether or not you think it's a value or you think it's not a value, again, that's entirely up to you. What you think something is worth and what I think something is worth doesn't actually mean what it's worth. Overall, the market decides the value of the product. right? So in any event, let me see, let's get started. What do we have here on top? This, what is this? This is a Wi-Fi access point, and it says it is Facebook Wi-Fi enabled. This is the ECW220. Now these boxes are all taped closed, and so this will be my first experience opening them. Before I open this, let's look at the Amazon page for this. This is the, what did I say it was, ECS220? ECW220. Okay, let me pull that page up. Here we go. Okay, this is a $300 managed 2x2 indoor wireless access point. And let's see what they're promoting about it here. And you can see this can be mounted just like a smoke detector up on the ceiling. Most people wouldn't even realize it was there. Cloud managed Wi-Fi 6 2x2 indoor wireless access point. This is if you want to extend Wi-Fi in your home. This is how we used to do it before mesh became a thing. But it's still, like I said, in hotels and other, in businesses primarily, we still use access points. 5 gigahertz, 802.11ax. Got a ceiling mount base. It's got a wall mount base. Dual concurrent 802.11ax architecture and backwards compatible with 802.11ac, A, B, G, and N Wi-Fi devices. Its antenna is internal, supports up to 1200 megabits per second in 5 gigahertz frequency band and 574 megabits per second in 2.4 gigahertz frequency band. Uplink and downlink of OFDMA improves transmissions to access points and client devices. Uplink and downlink of multi-user, multi-input, multi-output for optimal signal and reception reliability for up to 2 devices. That means 2 devices can be sending and transmitting data at the same time. This device here can have 2 conversations at the exact same time with 2 different devices. Usually it has to trade off. I'll talk to that one, then I'll talk to this one. And it does it so fast, you don't realize it's juggling. But in this case, it can do 2 at the same time. Wi-Fi 7, of course, can do many more than that. Gig-E PoE compliance with 802.3 AF and 48 volt power over Ethernet or PoE input for flexible installations up to 328 feet. So 100 meters is the length of a standard gigabit, the limited run length of a single network cable, gigabit network cable. And that, of course, 100 meters is 328 feet. And this is saying that you could place this access point up to 328 feet away from the other end of the cable, right? Because the access point would be wired into the router that would be doing what we call the backhaul. And that router that you're plugging it into, or the switch that you're plugging it into, can also provide this with power, and it will transmit the data and power up to 328 feet. Then let's see, do we have another picture here? We've got a Kensington lock. You'll see that a lot with any small devices that can be stolen. So the Kensington lock enables you to attach a steel cable and then attach the other end of the steel cable to something. You don't normally see that on access points. Because again, they're usually up in the ceiling and the ceiling's too high for people to reach. So let's go back over to camera 1 and see if the pictures online match what's in the box. So one way that we would get Wi-Fi from one end of an office to another would often be using access points. You'll see access points used mostly in businesses and not in homes. Typically, homes are going to use mesh routers, but it really depends on the design of the home and the distance we're running. So this is a very common business solution. You'll see these in hospitals, for example, hotels. You'll see them in restaurants where they're offering Wi-Fi to their customers. And let me bring this up to the camera and you can get a close-up. Kind of looks like reminds me of the old Macintosh routers, what were they called, airports, but it's a lot thinner. So there's our Kensington lock. We're smooth all the way around. We have some lights, so when this thing is up on the ceiling, somebody, if they need to diagnose it, they can just look up and see the lights to determine what the status is. Apparently, I'm holding it upside down. And then on the back, it's going to mount similar to a smoke detector. It'll mount similar to anything that uses this kind of mount. And then, of course, they have what appears to be some kind of a mounting device that can slide in here, and it can slide in and then apparently click and lock into here. Underneath, right under here, that's where you're going to put your cables. And as you can see, it's got just one jack that's going to feed it the internet connection from the router. We have a reset switch there, and we have a barrel style power connector. Ideally, we would use PoE, so we would only have to use the LAN cable. And you will see it identifies as a LAN, then in parentheses it says PoE, power over Ethernet. If you use power over Ethernet, you will not need to use the DC 12-volt input. See how that can be quite appealing. But in order to use power over Ethernet, your router or the other end of the cable, wherever the other end of this cable you plug into, has to plug into a power over Ethernet device. And that's where these little adapters come in. And these little adapters, you have to plug them in somewhere so they get power from the wall. And then you're going to put the device you want to provide power to in one plug, and then the source of your internet in the other plug. So if your switch or your router do not support PoE, you just need one of these little boxes. And this would not go anywhere near up on the ceiling. This would go closer to where the router is at the source of your internet. And then they have them in gigabit speeds and 2.5 gig speeds, as you can see here. We can take a look at these, and they're mostly going to look exactly the same. It's just the internals are a little different. And they do show a diagram here on the back showing a sample of how that would be hooked up. So yes, I mean, I would love an opportunity to test one of these. First of all, I wouldn't be able to do any kind of construction work here in Studio B. On the opposite side of Studio B, we do have a weak signal. We can get there. We're fine. We're about 2.5 bars out of 5 bars. But with something like this, we could have full strength on the other side. But what I would have to do is essentially run a network cable up in the attic to wherever I was going to place this. Say I put this in the hallway at the other end of the building, and then run a networking cable down into this room where the router is. And the router does provide PoE, so I would not need to use one of these adapters because my router supports that. Or if I bought a PoE-enabled networking switch, the beauty of PoE is you don't have to plug in PoE devices. You can plug in any network devices no differently. It's just that PoE-enabled devices will get power, that's all. All right, and so I just wanted to see what else is in the box included with this access point. We do have a small instruction book. These are very easy to set up. And I'm gonna just bring this up there and we'll let the camera focus on it. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna leave it up here too long, but essentially you can freeze the frame or come back to this, or you can pull this documentation up online as a PDF file at the EnGenius website. This shows you different abilities of mounting technique using something called a T-rail as an option. The other typical mount points, this one over here, similar to the way a smoke detector might mount. It's similar in size and shape to a smoke detector. And that is the Wi-Fi access point ECW220. Now this is industrial use equipment, okay? So you're gonna say, well, $299 for an access point is expensive. This isn't the cheap stuff you're getting, designed for home users. This is designed for businesses. What I'm trying to tell you is the business grade equipment works great in a house. But when I show you like these little mini HP computers here, they don't sell these to consumers. These are sold to businesses. Don't get me wrong. A consumer can go on HP's website and buy one, but they don't advertise or market this to consumers. This is strictly for businesses. That's the bread and butter for this device. And this device is built at a whole nother level of quality and a whole nother level of ease of being able to upgrade, work on it in any way, get in and get out quickly, and to have easy access to the RAM, everything. Super easy to get into, super easy to upgrade. And as a result, they cost a lot more than the stuff they sell over at Best Buy. All right, so consumer grade stuff is really sort of the cheap stuff. And that's fine because that's all most consumers ever need. But if you're an enthusiast, if you're somebody with a home lab, something like that, then you really should be looking at business grade equipment. You'll be much better satisfied with your end results. Trying to utilize consumer equipment in a business environment usually doesn't work out very well. It might work out at first, but it's usually very difficult to sustain it. And well, you can just try it for yourself. I can tell you, as a managed service provider, I used to install basically residential routers into small businesses. And that did resolve the immediate need, but it didn't last very long before we started having issues that could only be resolved through having more control over the router, more features, and more expandability that is unique to a business, especially as the business is growing. And in the case of homes, you're adding more and more Wi-Fi devices in your house. If you think about it, how many Wi-Fi devices did you have in your house 15 years ago? How many Wi-Fi devices did you have in your house 5 years ago? I want you to think about anything Wi-Fi. You might have a barbecue grill that's Wi-Fi. You might have an appliance of some kind that's Wi-Fi. You might have a Nest thermostat, or you might have a Ring doorbell. You might have a bunch of cell phones, tablets, televisions. Think about how much Wi-Fi you've added to your house. And so the equipment you bought a few years ago may start to be overburdened by how much you're taxing it with adding each new Wi-Fi device. And then, of course, if the router's a few years old, the Wi-Fi devices you're adding may be Wi-Fi 6E, but if your router's only Wi-Fi 5, nothing's going any faster than Wi-Fi 5. You might have a Ferrari, but if you get it on the freeway at rush hour, you're not going to go any faster than the cars in front of you, right? If you're not the lead dog, the scenery never changes. Something like that. All right, let me see what the next box is. I feel like it's Christmas time, and I'm going to start on this stack over here first. Now this is called a Cloud 5 4x4. It is a Cloud 5 4x4 dual band indoor access point. Okay, so where this access point is a 2x2, we've already explained what that means. This is a 4x4, meaning it's basically able to transmit and receive twice as much as this one at the same time. So if you're in a busy environment where there's people constantly, it could be a home where you've got kids that are streaming movies and such, and parents are doing something else, and so everybody's hammering on the router simultaneously. Having the router's ability to communicate with more wireless devices with multi-input, multi-output, multi-user, MU-MIMO, makes the experience more responsive. It makes it feel like internet's faster, even though it's not speeding your internet up. So let me take a look at the Amazon page and see how they are promoting this. This is called the, what did I say this? Cloud 5. Oh, I stand corrected. This is a cheaper version. This is a less expensive version. I think Why is this less expensive? Let me pull up the Amazon page here on the screen. So this $170 device, the EnGenius Cloud Managed ECW130 Indoor, it's for indoor use, 4x4, multi-user, multi-input, multi-output, dual band, meaning it's 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. It's a wireless access point. Can reach speeds of 1733 megabits per second on 5 gigahertz and 800 megabits per second on 2.4. Power adapter not included because you can power it with PoE. That's why the power adapter is optional. You don't have to have it. And if we look through some of these other pictures, they give us some examples of how this might be used. It supports beam forming and beam band sharing, as well as dynamic channel selection, which is good. So frequency channel, the traffic on a particular channel may be empty one day, and then one of your neighbors or somebody installs something, and all of a sudden your signal goes to crap and you don't know why your signal's terrible. This thing can dynamically change that so that it's always on a clean channel. The beam forming, of course, is going to help with your, we've talked a lot about beam forming in the past. It's going to help with the performance of getting that, the appearance of getting better speeds at a further range. And apparently can work as a mesh as well. That's nice to see. It's nice to see that option. Now, looking through, just seeing what it says about this item, 802.11ac Wave 2 compatible with 802.11ax AC, A, B, G, and N client devices. It supports, again, we talked about that, 1733 megabits per second in the 5 gigahertz band, 800 megabits per second in the 2.4 gigahertz. It's cloud managed with an unlimited number of access points from anywhere with the EnGenius Cloud app. It's got 4 6 decibel 5 gigahertz and 4 decibel 2.4 gigahertz for 360-degree Wi-Fi coverage. 1 gigabit port for link aggregation to maintain wired speed. Fast and reliable access point utilizing 4 spatial streams, and MU-MIMO for any professional office. Real-time access point diagnostics, deep dive analytics, and remote configurations. You can understand why that would be useful in an office environment, but also really kind of cool to have in a house if you're that kind of a user that wants that kind of control. And as we scroll down, this person apparently did not have a good experience. Do not buy. This unit keeps disconnecting from the client, and the unit will not reconnect, won't even broadcast once it's disconnected, and doesn't automatically reconnect even after some power cycled. So this sounds like either this person doesn't know what they're doing or the unit they got was damaged. Now, unlike buying something from AliExpress, when you buy from EnGenius, you get support. And I think, I'm pretty sure that EnGenius support is USA based. I need to double check my facts on that. At last I was familiar, they were doing, when you called support, you talked to an American. Sometimes when you talk to these people in other countries, their accents can make them very difficult to understand. And if you're already frustrated with a problem, what I would have done before I left a negative review is I would have reached out to EnGenius support. The other thing you can do if you can't be bothered to call support is return the item. You have 30-day free returns at Amazon, and exchange it for another one to determine if you have a bad unit. If you got a second one that was doing the same thing, then I would want to find out if I'm doing something wrong, because clearly they're not selling a device the way that this person describes it. Because if that's the way all of these were working, they wouldn't be in business anymore. So they either got a bad unit or they don't know how to use it properly. So in either case, they should have reached out to EnGenius for help. That's what I would recommend. Again, when you're buying from a swap meet or a garage sale, when you're buying from AliExpress, you're sort of on your own. It's kind of a cash and carry situation where they take your cash, you get the product, and you never see each other again. That's not what EnGenius is doing here. EnGenius is there to back you up and be your support if you need them. They've been in business a long time, and I suspect they're going to continue to be in business a long time. All right. Put the tape on this one. This one probably is going to look very similar. It's packaged in like an egg carton style packaging, and that's usually really good packaging. Like the amount of give that you have, because shippers can treat stuff pretty rough. They'll throw boxes around, and it doesn't break like styrofoam, and it's not messy like packing peanuts and other types of packing, or the inflated bags of plastic bags filled with air that burst when they throw the box hard. To me, this is the best way to package stuff. It's a custom cut out egg carton style of cardboard that it's quite flexible and has a lot of give to it. Now this unit's quite a bit larger than that other unit. I'm going to bring this over to you. So again, this is the Cloud 5. And EnGenius is going to use very similar mounting techniques from one product to the next, especially within the same product family. And I still like to hold it upside down, don't I? So you've got your lights that indicate the status of the Wi-Fi, the status of the LAN connection 1 and LAN connection 2, and whether or not this thing even has power. Obviously, if the power light's out, your diagnostic is over real quick. Looking back here, we've got not one, but 2 Ethernet ports. That allows link aggregation. That means you could run 2 networking cables to your router or switch that supports link aggregation, and that both cables can work at the same time. Now, this doesn't double the throughput for an individual user, but what it does do is it allows the maximum throughput for one user, maximum throughput for another user to be the same as if they were individual users, assuming you have the bandwidth on the other side to cover that. Otherwise, they'd each have to split it 50-50, right? If they were both trying to download something big at the same time, then they'd get, each of it would, instead of a gigabit download, let's say they get 500 megs apiece. But by using aggregation, it's going to be like they can get a gigabit as though they were doing it without the other person. It doesn't benefit one person. It only benefits if there's 2 or more. Now, again, we've got that same kind of mounting technique here where it slides, some piece slides down in here and then locks in. And power is optional. There's a reset button there. If you forgot the password or for some reason, I don't know, the thing had locked up and seized in a way that would require you to pull it off of its mount. That's a pretty serious repair. We have a small box in here as well. I don't know what's in here. Oh, these are the different mounting plates that you would secure to the wall. And that this piece here, I've never done this before, but it's so obvious how this works. I'll just show you because I'm pretty confident. It seems pretty straightforward. This piece here is what you would secure to the wall. See, there's a couple holes in the middle, circular holes there. And that this piece, it appears, would go this way, would slide like this. It go this way. No, it definitely have to go this way. See, there's a little tab that sticks up. Kind of see the tab right by my finger, and that's going to fit into that slot right there. That's what locks it in. So if this were mounted to the wall, then you would slide that up, you bend this piece back, and it locks in and it's completely flush. And that's how you're going to secure that to the wall or to the ceiling. It's obviously designed to go into some kind of an electrical box. That's super easy. I like that. So let's say that you've got this thing up in the ceiling and you have to take it down for some reason. That piece, remember, if it's going to be mounted up here like this piece has got a little tail that sticks out right by the Ethernet jack. You'll just lift your finger up, put your finger under that and lift it up, and then you will pull back on the unit and slide it away. So that's a very easy mount and dismount technique. And on this end of it here, you'll see this port. That's a Kensington lock. Once again, if you wanted to secure it, if it was in an area that was like where it was likely to be stolen or it was easy to be stolen. Usually, again, when they're put up in the ceiling, it's usually too high up. Most people couldn't reach it unless they stood on something. So not always required. And then also in this box, we've got a couple of plastic wall anchors. So that's all that's in this box. Pretty straightforward. It is a solution device, okay? This is not, this in and of itself isn't very useful to people. This is going to be a part of something bigger. And it's designed so that you can sort of a la carte your networking solution instead of, getting some all-in-one box that does everything. That rarely works out for businesses for a number of reasons. But also in the case of Wi-Fi, to extend your range and be able to change the type of internet access depending on where the Wi-Fi access point is. Certain people may not be allowed certain access to certain things if they're in a certain area, for example. All right, so those are the two access points. Now this other box, I am super curious about. And this one right here. This is called a 4-port cloud security gateway with 2.5 gigabit power over Ethernet ports. And it's the ESG510. And let's see what the Amazon page says about this. This thing's quite interesting. Okay, this is what's in the box. EnGenius Cloud Managed ESG510 is a 1.6 gigahertz quad-core processor that powers this. It's a security gateway. It has Dual-WAN, 2.5 gig Ethernet, Dual-LAN, 2.5 gig Ethernet. It's got cellular failover. It's got a stateful firewall, and it has site-to-site and client VPN. It's all part of this box right here. You take a look at some of these pictures. And it can give you some examples of how this would be used to securely connect a network from a main office to a branch office or to a remote client. It also shows how you can have 2 different ISPs as well as a third ISP. So if ISP1 goes down, it defaults over to ISP2. If ISP2 goes down, it defaults to the cellular internet service provider, which could be 3G, 4G, or 5G. That's what a failover is. This is your default. If this fails, goes down for any reason, goes over to number 2. If that also fails, goes over to number 3. That's cellular. That's unlikely going to fail. It's a quad-core 1.6 gigahertz processor, which is pretty powerful for this little guy. Again, there's some examples of how things would plug in. And just another picture of the box. We have a USB port. We have a console port. Console ports are usually used in corporate structures of corporate level networking equipment. And so a console port, basically you would take a laptop, for example, and open up a terminal session, plug the laptop in with a Ethernet cable into the switch or the router or the gateway. In this case, it's a gateway. And that's how you would program it. And once you're done programming it, you unplug from the console port. And this keeps people from messing about with your security. You'd have to have a certain level of knowledge to understand how to access it. And then you're going to need the credentials, meaning the login and password, before you could make any changes to this. So this is some pretty serious equipment. Now, I'm not quite sure where somebody would use this in a home unless you were running a home-based business and it was making a lot of money, and downtime would be seriously impacting your bottom line. So let me go back over to back to camera 1. Here I am. And let me see what you guys have been saying in the chat room. John Williams said, I wish I had a Kensington lock on my doorbell camera. You know, John, most doorbell cameras have a guarantee against theft. They have insurance, like the Ring camera. If somebody steals it, Ring will send you another camera for free. And in most cases, the person who steals it is on camera as they're stealing it. And many doorbell cameras have an alarm so that if the doorbell camera is removed from, like they're typically in a holder, it'll go off like a car alarm and it won't shut off. And it's loud. It's very loud. It's a chirping, loud, screaming alert that the person stealing it, even if you don't see them, you could just listen for them. They're not going to be able to quiet it down. So, and that's usually something you can enable and disable on, specifically on doorbell cameras, because people do steal them. Yeah, so they've already thought of that. David Martinez says, the school where I worked has those wireless access points on the roof. Well, I'm assuming you mean on the ceiling. They wouldn't necessarily be outdoors, although they do make outdoor wireless access points. But these access points I've shown you, these are for indoor use only. They're not IPS rated. I want to see what this bad boy looks like. As you can tell, this is a $600 device. I'm not exactly sure how I would be able to test this for you guys. I mean, technically, I do have 2 ISPs in Studio B, but I need to manually switch between them. They're not equal. The idea behind this is that at least ISP1 and ISP2 should be equal. So if one goes down, you don't even realize it. Cellular is never going to be equal, but it's going to be better than nothing, and that'll keep you up and running. In the box, we've got a quick installation guide that they've included. Remember, you can pull any of these installation guides up by going to the EnGenius website and just click on the product support link for this product and then click to download the manual in PDF form. It looks like this is probably a power brick in here, if I had to guess. And then the unit itself, oh, it's bigger than it looked online. I thought this was way smaller. Pretty good size. Let me bring it over to the camera and I'll show you close up. This is going to mount like many other switches or routers in the sense that it's got the little cutouts on the bottom. But yeah, just like it shows the picture on Amazon. And I'm always going to hold it upside down, aren't I? This highlights your WAN 1 and WAN 2 inputs, and then your power over Ethernet. And these two are going to be power over Ethernet. That can go into a switch, access points. Somehow you can have a wireless WAN plug in here. I'm not quite sure how that works. That's your console port. That's for configuration and maintenance. This is what your IT and admin would be doing. And then we have status lights for power, wireless. I think that's wireless WAN, WWAN. And then there's a test light and a PoE light. The test light is, this is outside of my pay grade for sure. I think Camera Girl would be more comfortable and familiar with this grade of equipment. And of course, we have the information on the bottom regarding the model number, serial number, all that fun stuff, QR code over there. At the back of it, that's going to be your power connector right there. This is not a power over Ethernet. This cannot be powered by power over Ethernet, but it can provide power over Ethernet to other devices that are plugged into these ports here. This thing must get warm, I guess, with that 1.6 gigahertz quad-core processor. It's probably got a CPU fan in there, so when you see these holes on the side, that usually indicates there's some airflow that's got to happen here. So when an IT department would set this up, we definitely wouldn't want to block the sides. It's all metal, all the way around. No plastic on this. Industrial. This is industrial grade stuff. Jane Perkins says the gateway sounds like the equivalent of a Cisco or Fortinet I used to install for a global ISP for client VPNs. I'm sure it's similar. John Williams said the police was able to catch the thief of his doorbell camera because he was able to provide a picture to them. Yeah. Gilberto says networking in business can be complex. I was a CNA certified Cisco network engineer certified, and it's very difficult subject as business goes. No room for mistakes due to security configuration. Oh, mistakes can be very costly for sure. Is WLAN for phone? I would guess that's what wireless WAN would be. Yeah, that would be my guess. So that, I guess, indicates if your third failover is available and ready. I guess that's just a status line. Okay, so again, no real practical way for me to test any of this for you, at least not today. But at least we get to familiarize ourselves with what this networking equipment is, what it does, and who it's for. The last thing I've got here are these EnGenius Fit wireless access points. Now, he sent me 3 of these because he kind of felt like even though it wasn't the wireless bridge, it was asking about wanting to test out a wireless bridge to replace the one I'm using. And he said, well, maybe you could use a couple of these access points and tie them together like a bridge. I don't think that's going to work for me. I have to try it, but it's not really what they're designed for. So these EnGenius Fit indoor wireless access points, let me go to the Amazon page here. And these are about $70 a piece. These are more in line for home user or small office users, much more affordable and nowhere near as powerful. So if we look at, let's see, let's go to the Amazon page. EnGenius Fit wireless access point. It's an EWS 356 FIT, true Wi-Fi 6, dual band AX3000. It's cloud and app and on-premises control options. In other words, some of those devices I was showing you are cloud configured only. This one you can configure on premises, much like consumer-based equipment. WPA3 support, multi-user, multi-input, multi-output, mesh, and seamless roaming. Roaming meaning that, like a cell phone, as you're talking to somebody while you're driving, you're switching cell towers seamlessly. So this will seamlessly switch if somebody's walking around with a wireless device. It could be their smartphone, it could be a tablet on the Wi-Fi, and they're walking around a big building, maybe multiple floors, and they're switching access points seamlessly, not even realizing they've switched access points. That's a really good price for that. Now let's see that it does all this stuff. Let's take a look at some of the pictures they're showing in use. Supports up to 100 concurrent users or devices simultaneously. Of course, it's going to juggle them around. It won't simultaneously talk to them at the same time, but within milliseconds, mostly seamless. Latency response times will go up the more devices are communicating with it at the same time. This shows you it's good, ideal for small businesses. It's good for wireless connectivity. It's secure, reliable. I guess that means what? It's got a Kensington lock. It's got a web interface. That's always ideal. This shows you the difference in performance. Wireless N was 300 megabits per second at its best. Wireless AC was 574 megabits per second at its best. And wireless AX, which is what this is, Wi-Fi 6, does 1200 megabits per second at its best. In other words, under all ideal conditions with a good signal and with a Wi-Fi 6 device you're communicating with, this will be the best you're going to see. It does have a phone app for monitoring and analytics. They're showing it brings Wi-Fi, for example, to a coffee shop, flower shop, restaurants. Again, maybe a bit overkill for homes, but it depends on the home. Bit controller gives you greater control of your network using plug-and-play hardware with embedded network management software. Admins can easily view detailed analytics from a single pane of glass, as well as monitor and troubleshoot issues instantly. So we talk about Windows, right? We have the Windows operating system. And it's called Windows because every time you open an application, it opens in a window. And for a lot of analytics, you need to open several windows. I want to see this data, I want to see that data. And then one window sits on top of another window, or you've got to manually drag them around so they can all fit on the screen. So this term you may not be familiar with is called single pane of glass. That means you can have all of the data of various data points, categories, customized to what you want, all displayed in one window. That's why they call it a single pane of glass. And that's why you see here, there's a window here, there's a window here. I don't know if you guys are seeing my mouse move, but no, I guess you're seeing it. But you'll see there's 3 individual windows in that one window. That's referred to as a single pane of glass. And this is incredibly useful if you're in IT, because you need to monitor a lot of information. And instead of alt-tabbing around into different windows trying to find the one you're looking for, you can have these up on the screen at all times and have all your data points that you're monitoring right in front of you always. Makes it so much easier. And then what else do we have? It's got smart mesh technology, and that means these will communicate with each other. That's why he sent 3 of them. They will work together as a mesh so that we can place a unit here in the basement, we can place a unit here on the top floor, and the 2 units will overlap like a Venn diagram. And as the people walk around in the building, they can seamlessly switch or hand off from one device to the other without even noticing that their connection to the internet has switched the point at which you are communicating with. It's this last one. Oh, that's just a picture of the bottom, which shows, again, 1 Ethernet port. We have our barrel power connector. We have a recessed reset switch. Those are critical to have those reset switches. I can't tell you how many times people have lost passwords, or somebody, I don't know, finds something on sale somewhere and they buy it and it's been used and it's all locked out. That reset switch is what you need to gain access to reset the unit. And obviously, you cannot do that remotely. If you want to break in, you're going to have to physically be there to do it. So $70. This thing's got good ratings, got 107 ratings, averaging 4.3 stars. That's what you want to see. And of course, I would encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about this device and how people are using it, read these different reviews, because rarely are 2 people going to use this in the same way or in the same environment or for the same reasons. And then see if that applies to you, or see if it doesn't apply to you after you read these, reviews that somebody has voluntarily left just for the assistance of helping others understand what they wish somebody would have explained to them or wish they had known. That's why people go through the trouble of writing these. These are all fairly new reviews. This one isn't. This one's from 2018. Is this for a different product? Yeah, always pay attention to what the review is. It may not be for the specific product you're looking at, because if we scroll back up to the top of the page, there are 2 products up here. There's an AX 1800 and an AX 1300. And the AX 1300 is the older model. I don't even think they make that anymore. It doesn't even show it's available for sale. So original reviews were likely left for this model. So pay attention to the date. If it's a newer review, it's likely on the newer model. But you can also verify, because on Amazon pages that list multiple products from the same manufacturer, the review right underneath, it'll say what the review product specifically referencing. I'll get the words out. All right, let me go back over to camera 1. And let's take a look. So this is how it's packaged. Much, much smaller than the other units. I like that it's 2x2. I like that it's got power over Ethernet power. Kind of like just a shrunken down version of the other units. And what's in here? Same thing, our mounting plates. They give us 2 types of mounting there. Plus we get some zip ties, some metal wire wall anchors. Holy cow. Are those metal? A couple of screws for the anchors. A couple of plastic anchors with screws. I guess we have a total of 3 of these different mount. Not exactly sure what's different about. One is different than the other in the sense of what's going on here in the middle. Not quite sure what that's for. Obviously, you're only going to need to use one of these. So there's 3 there for a reason I don't quite understand. I bet you I'll understand it real quick when I go to mount it. Oh, I see. So I don't know the answer to that. Bottom of this feels metal, and then the top feels plastic, but absolutely feels like a metal bottom here. And I'll bring it over to the camera and give you a close-up. Much like the other ones I brought up to the camera, you'll see when I hold this, it's quite a bit smaller than the other units. We also don't really have any activity LEDs other than just this one right here. So we don't get the data points of, is 2.4 on, is 5 gigahertz on, is, what's the status of the input connection? Do we have power? This may just be a power light, or it may be like everything's good light. Maybe if anything goes out, this light goes red or something. I do prefer to have multiple lights to know what's going on when there's a problem. It's so easy to simply look at the lights, and sometimes that's all you need. Diagnostic could literally be just literally looking at the lights and it tells you what's wrong. And that happens more often than you think. We don't really talk about that because there's nothing to talk about. Look over, you fix it, you're back up and running, and you go on with your day. It's not something that you're struggling with usually, and I got to tell the audience about this and make people aware. So on the back, again, there's our Ethernet input, which again can provide power. So you do not need to provide power individually if you use power over Ethernet. Same mounting, right? Slides in and locks in there. Completely smooth like a smoke detector, meant to be mounted up on the ceiling or against the wall. Okay. Now, of the products I've shown you, these are just PoE adapters, these here. I don't think I need to take them out of the box. They look like, take you to the Amazon page just to show you what they look like. The only difference between them is one is a gigabit and one is a 2.5 gigabit PoE adapter. They call them injectors. They're injecting power into the data line, into the network line. This provides up to 30 watts of power, up to 100 meters. And the other unit is 2.5 gigabit, and it provides 30 watt may be the limit. Yeah, sends up to 30 watts of power for connecting access points, IP cameras, VoIP phones. Oh, that's another one I forgot. Yeah, VoIP phones are very, very common in offices. And the phones typically, they have an LCD screen and you can transfer calls. They got a bunch of buttons for features on the phone. And that's all being done over the network, over the internet. And the phones need power to run the circuitry of the phone. And typically that power can be provided by the same cable that's providing the data for the phone to be able to work. So again, you don't need to plug a power cable in like you used to with the old PBX phones. And of course, these are also wall mountable, depending on how you're using them. And you see they will plug into the wall just like a laptop power adapter, but the difference is all they're doing is converting that power to 30 watts, taking an input data line, adding power to it, sending it back out to your device, your camera, your VoIP phone, etc. This is much cleaner if you just get a router or switch that provides PoE, but if you don't have it, that's how you can add it. Okay, so let me go back over to camera 1. Now, of all these devices, which one intrigues you the most and why? So I think his idea was for me to try using 3 of these to basically create a wireless bridge. I don't think that's going to work well for us. So I'm not even sure I want to attempt it. If I feel like I'm not going to be successful or I'm not going to get the end result I want, and knowing the amount of trouble I have to go through to set all this up, I really prefer to get the right tool for the job rather than kludging something to make it work. So as I mentioned, when we get to this level of networking gear, it's really designed for offices. And this is exactly why, because offices have these problems almost of any size. It doesn't matter if it's a small office or if it's a big downtown building. They have the same problems, just at a different scale. And it's something most home users, hobbyists, and enthusiasts never even contemplate or consider. Like their whole world, and the world that they know is only the world that they experience. And because they've never worked in a corporate environment or they've never worked in corporate IT, without people like me making videos to introduce these concepts, they think the whole world is as simple as what they're doing. When in fact, we're just scratching the surface here. This is still rather entry level, small office level equipment. We can keep going up and up and up depending on the scale of the business. That means how many employees they have, how much data throughput, what the business does, right? A company like Google, for example, is nothing but a big IT department for the most part, the entire company. Whereas the IT department for most companies is just a department. A company that does something, whatever their business is almost irrelevant. They almost always have an IT department, whether they're in manufacturing or whether they're providing a service, whether it's a mechanic or a tire shop, air conditioner repair or pest control company, a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, or you're at some corporation in a downtown, right, where you see all the high rises and all the different functions of all those companies doing all the different businesses they do. They have different requirements for what they need their networking gear to be able to handle as far as throughput, security, and of course, depending on how capable the equipment is, it's priced accordingly. A lot of this business level stuff can get quite pricey. So EnGenius it's kind of your entry point into business, but it's also something that you can continue to grow with. Douglas Burchell says, I like the last one. Yeah, well, I imagine that most home users would probably find the more affordable access point to be the most within their grasp. Like, probably would have a hard time justifying any use for this stuff for most home users, but we do see a lot of hobbyists and enthusiasts on YouTube, and it wouldn't surprise me if some major amount of folks that watch videos like this would have stuff like this in their house just for the sake of having it because it's fun, not for any real practical purpose. I'm just kind of curious. Paul House said his flat is not big enough to worry about Wi-Fi. Well, sure, if you lived in a studio apartment, I think yeah. John Williams says, Carrie, it never fails. I learned something new on your every live show you produce. Thanks so much. You have the best channel for people to learn tech. Well, thank you, John. I'm not trying to turn anybody into tech. All I'm trying to do is familiarize you with the technology that's out there, why it exists, so you don't just dismiss it. You have to understand that this is the stuff that makes the world go round. The stuff the folks at home use, that's kind of the leftover stuff. That's, the consumer stuff, it's just real basic, simple stuff. And that's why when consumers are trying to get more power out of something, or they're They're worried about health and safety and things like that. Like, they don't, it's nothing. You know, you get into the corporate level stuff and then you could have some legitimate health concerns when you're surrounded by, you know, equipment on a scale beyond your imagination if you've never experienced it. And consumer stuff is great. It's relatively bulletproof, simple to set up, almost for anybody that can just follow simple instructions or even simple pictures. This stuff typically requires a bit more knowledge, a bit more experience to set up. Although I will say, once again, EnGenius sort of is in the middle. It's ideal for smaller businesses. Businesses, I'd say, under 200 people. That to me would be, you know, when you go above 200 people, then you're in like corporation style of infrastructure. And then, of course, the budget's going to be a lot bigger. The needs are going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more employees in an IT department, whereas a small business may have one guy, right? Or maybe two. I've seen some small businesses where the business owner just does the IT stuff on the side. And that rarely is good IT work. Rarely. They think they're saving money, they can do it themselves. And then I go in there and see what they did, and, you know, they're not running at the best performance. They don't have very good security. Things aren't kept up to date because they're being, in most cases, reactive instead of proactive. An IT department is going to have you, ideally, being proactive to avoid problems. Most home users are not proactive. And a lot of small businesses that want to do everything themselves are taking time away from what their business is about to save money to set up their own networking stuff. Typically really don't know what they're doing. Do kind of a sloppy job in my experience. I very rarely see anybody who is capable at both whatever their business is and at their IT. And if they are capable, but the business grows, they soon learn the limits of their abilities, because when the business grows, now they have less time to mess with that and to learn it. So then eventually, and maybe begrudgingly, they have to pay somebody to do something that they're, oh, I knew I could do this myself, but, you know, the hours I will spend doing that takes me away from running my business. And that's how I promote my business as a managed service provider. I say, I'm going to take care of all your IT, your backups. I'm going to take care of everything. Security of the PCs, updates, maintenance, all of it. So you can focus on being a lawyer or being a dentist or whatever it is you do. Any amount of time you spend during working hours not doing the thing that you're an expert in, it's probably costing you more money to do it yourself and taking longer. You may not get it done right, or you might think you did, only the reality it could just keep costing you more and more in losses. And it may be cheaper for you to just hire somebody who's an expert in that and have it be their responsibility to maintain it, so you don't have to worry about it. And that's how I've got a job, quite frankly. Marco, joining us from Italy, says, I had a client, a multi-millionaire lawyer, who saved money by having his wife set up the Wi-Fi network in the office. No encryption. Every workstation on the LAN was exposed. Yeah. And sometimes it's those most educated people, the lawyers and the doctors, that are the worst with technology. I've known a few lawyers in particular who you can't talk to them. They know everything. They're overconfident. I guess that's part of being a lawyer, I guess, coming in and being very confident, defending your client. But it doesn't change the fact, and you'll see what they do, and they're just, in a few cases I'm thinking of, I did not work for them very long. In one instance, I don't think it lasted 2 days. The guy was very abrasive, and I wasn't having it. And he thought I shouldn't be talking back to him, which, he doesn't own me. And we hadn't exchanged any money at that point, so I wasn't obligated to him. But he just had that attitude that I'm the customer, I'm paying you. You should thank me for the opportunity. And, thank you, sir, may I have another? And I'm like, you can take your attitude and shove it. What we're doing is reciprocal. I'm helping you and you're helping me. It's not one way. You're not just giving me some money to help me out. You're requiring me to do a certain level of work within a certain frame of time, and in exchange for which you're going to pay me, and you expect the work I do to stay working. If it keeps failing and having issues, you're going to get angrier and angrier with me. So you're not doing me a favor by putting me under that responsibility and that stress. And I'm under no obligation to you, and you're under no obligation to me. So have a nice day. The benefits of being self-employed is being able to turn away work. And when I was working in corporate America, sometimes you had to do things that didn't necessarily make any sense because the politics of the people in charge said so. A lot of times the excuse was, you're not paid to think, just do what we tell you to do, don't worry about it. And that didn't sit well with me either. So being self-employed was the right path for this guy to take. All right, guys. Well, let me just scroll through the chat. If you have any final questions, we're almost at the 2-hour point. I like to keep these live videos right around 2 hours when possible. So we have a few minutes if you have any questions. If you've asked a question earlier, I didn't see it. If I didn't respond, please do ask it again. I'll do my best to provide an answer. Gilberto says he likes the EWS 356 fit. It's easier for a home user and it's a great price. Agreed. I'm with you. Kelly Stewart says, hello, Carrie. I have an access point and other things that you are showing from Netgear and TP-Link Armada equipment. So yeah, Kelly's familiar with the gist of what access points are used for. The home user access points just usually aren't as configurable, not as flexible as a business class, but it may not be something you need anyway. Blue Star Line says, Carrie, I'm about to upgrade to a Ryzen 7700X, and I was wondering, will my stock Wraith Prism cooler for my 3700X be enough? Not likely. It sort of depends on how you use the processor. So if you're really hammering on the processor, it's going to, I think that's a much higher wattage processor. It's got a higher TDP than a 3700X, and likely you're going to need some bigger cooler, something much more dense, larger surface area on the heatsink, or a liquid cooler. I mean, for a 7700X, me personally, I would use an all-in-one liquid cooler. It's easier. But if you're using the phone, if you're using the computer for like browsing the web and general everyday use, you probably aren't going to work that processor hard enough, long enough for that Wraith cooler to be inadequate. So part of it is how you use the computer. If you're going to hammer on it all the time and just keep constantly drawing as much power as possible out of it, it's going to generate a lot of heat, and you're going to find that Wraith cooler isn't going to cut it. Andy Kane says, from these products, which would suit home users? Well, any home user could use these. I mean, as I mentioned, we have a lot of home users that will put stuff in their homes that was never designed to be in their homes just because they can. They're just interested in it. It just really depends on the size of the home, the number of devices you're connecting, and what it is you're trying to do. So there's no way to say that none of this would ever apply to any home user. But each home is unique, right? Each environment and the number of devices that you're connecting, how many people are in the home trying to do things online at the same time, what speed of internet access do you have, how big is the home, what's the home made of, how the home is built. So there's no one size fits all on this stuff. Marco wants to know if I'm going to have the Italian immigration stamp on your passport. That sounds like a life goal. I wouldn't mind. Matthew Burden says, I am my company's IT department. Fortunately, we only have a few computers, printers, and a copier to maintain. Sometimes it's all you need is one. Douglas wants to know, what is tomorrow's show going to be about? I'm not sure whether or not we're doing a show tomorrow, and I got to figure that part out first. I don't have anything scheduled for tomorrow yet. I might later. Just stay subscribed to the channel, and you'll get the notification if and when I set up something for tomorrow. Cheryl wants to know, would a Wraith cooler even fit with the different socket type? Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it went from AM4 to AM5, right? Yeah, it probably won't fit. It does seem weird that you would drop that much cash on a new motherboard, a new CPU, and likely new RAM. You probably need DDR5, right? And be too cheap to buy a new cooler? Like, where does that make any sense? Kelly Stewart says he uses wireless 6 and he has power over Ethernet for all his equipment and access points. Well, there you go. And Kelly Stewart's just a standard home user, and you can see that he's utilizing this equipment to meet his needs. So that's why I say it's very difficult to say what's the right solution. It very much depends on the individual. Everybody's different. So what we have here is sort of a buffet. What's the best thing to eat is up to each person that comes up to the buffet table. How much can I put on my plate is up to each person who comes up to the buffet table. The only difference is this is all sort of a la carte, meaning that you can piece each thing you need to accomplish whatever the task is or the goal is you're trying to get done, whatever accomplishment you're trying to achieve, using a combination of this networking equipment for various needs for VoIP phones, security cameras, Wi-Fi access points, wireless Internet of Things, as well as employees, and you might even want guest access to the network, to the Wi-Fi anyway, depending on what your business is and what you do, may be absolutely required. M. Harris in the chat room says hello. John Paul Bacon says the AM5 socket uses AM4 socket coolers. Good to know. I have never seen an AM5 socket, so yeah, I have no idea. Andy Kane said he's got a Hyper 212 on a 7700 Ryzen 7. It's not a very good cooler. But again, it kind of depends on how you're using it. And he's talking about a 7700X, which is going to run a bit hotter. Archibald wants to know, I've got a Lenovo ThinkCentre Tiny Intel. Can I upgrade to an i5 processor? I have no idea. No idea. I've only seen one Lenovo Tiny PC. I don't know anything about them. Oystein said, we have 1,900 access points at my work, but only one access point at my home. That's my work maintaining those. Thanks for another great show, Carrie, and enjoy the gift card. Oh, well, thank you, Oystein. I guess I should check my phone. Jim KJ3N said he live streamed his 7700X build back in February. What did you use for a cooler on your 7700X, Jim? Oystein said he's finally getting around to testing the Minis Forum NAD9 mini PC, and it works great. That is one of my favorites, Oystein. Yeah, I got my NAD9 right in the other room there. I love that little thing, little rocket ship. Martin says any AM4 coolers that don't require custom backplates are compatible with AM5. That doesn't mean it's going to be compatible with the processor or be able to cool that processor down adequately just because it fits, just so we're clear. Jim said he used an Arctic eSport 34. He said it's not really enough. I set a max temp in the BIOS and did an undervolt. That kind of defeats the purpose though, doesn't it? Let me check the phone here, and then I guess we'll wrap things up as we approach the 2-hour mark here. John Paul Bacon says the AM5 socket itself is LGA now, where the AM4 socket is PGA. So it's pin grid array. AMD put an LGA socket in the same area as the older PGA socket. Oh, I see. Okay. So now they move the pins like Intel into the socket. Whereas the old AMD CPUs, the AM4s, the pins are on the CPU. And then you go to pull your heatsink off and you could rip your CPU right out of the socket and bend the pins. Makes more sense for the pins to be in the socket. In either case, the pins are delicate, whether the pins are on the CPU or the pins are in the socket. Either way, the pins are delicate. But the benefit of having the pins in the socket is that you can have a support plate, securing plate, hold that CPU down. And that way, when you have to pull your heatsink off, there's no way you can pull the CPU out. And that's where I feel Intel has been superior. And obviously, AMD agrees because now AMD has copied what Intel has done. Took them a while to get there, but makes sense. Oystein sends a $100 Amazon gift card. He says, I hope you enjoy this Amazon gift card as my late fee. Thank you for all the knowledge you're sharing. Thank you, Oystein, for your continued generosity. I appreciate you very much. How about a Norway stamp on my passport? That's what I want. And Italy. And Scotland and Ireland. And Wales and England. Just those. Camera girl has sent me a couple of thumbnails she's working on for an up. What's that? Thank you. We have a build coming up that I wasn't planning on doing, but we were messing around on Amazon a little bit. Saw a very unique case. I thought, wouldn't that be kind of fun to build in? And I have a lot of motherboards sitting around here that have no home. So parts are ordered. I should get the parts. I'll get some parts today. I'll get the rest of the parts by this time next week. And then the week after that, I should be able to schedule a build. It'll probably be done on a Friday. That's all I can tell you, but she's already done the thumbnail, which is cool. Martin Hogg says hello from Scotland. Ellen, as it says, is it the choo-choo case again? No, this is a case I've never seen before in my life, and I've never seen a video of anybody building in it. I haven't looked for one. Maybe I should look for one, but I've not stumbled across one. So some more unique content for the channel. The system I built Friday with Mitch, as I mentioned, that system's available for sale, and I did order the screen for it. So hopefully the seller is a real seller and not a scam seller. And hopefully I'll get that, I hope by the end of this week, so I can attach it inside the case. A couple people did reach out inquiring about buying it, but none of those have panned out. So it's still available for those that are interested. That's probably 2 weeks out for that build, I would guess. See, these videos, a lot of planning goes into them. We have stuff like this equipment. This had been planned for 3 weeks to do this. So, and that doesn't include the emails back and forth just to even bring up the concept, the idea, let alone they have to ship it. I have to wait for it to arrive. I've got to verify I got everything. And that's without me doing any research or prep to really demonstrate how these are used, because it was very obvious to me that given the environment these are designed, or the solutions these are designed to perform, isn't really something I can simulate here. But I do know, and I have used EnGenius products, and I know everything they say is true. And I know their equipment is very well made, very reliable, and they have excellent support. They've been around a very long time. So they may not be a familiar name to a home user, but for those of us in IT, EnGenius is that sort of that middle ground, as I mentioned, for typically used in small businesses. Don't see a lot of it in big corporate America, but there are some. John Williams wants to know if I got any news from PayPal on the eBay scammer. They told me they'd get an answer to me by September the 2nd. So, this was for a scam that happened back in July, and I've been trying to resolve it for pretty much after, I think the whole thing kicked off within about 6 days after the sale, and I've been pursuing it ever since. Keep our fingers crossed that PayPal will do the right thing. Jim KJ3N said he's got a max temp of 85 degrees Celsius and a 30 millivolt undervolt. And his 7700X AMD hits 5.2 gigahertz on all cores and 5.4 on a single core. Yeah, but what could it do if you didn't undervolt it and you were able to put an appropriate cooler on it? I do like the look of the AM5 CPUs. The heat spreader is really cool. I wouldn't mind having one just as a trinket. It's a shame you cover that up with the heatsink and you'll never see it. Jason Ryrick says, great live as always, Carrie. Thank you, Jason. Thank you to Camera Girl for the thumbnail used in today's video. Thanks to my friends over at EnGenius for sending these products for evaluation. Hopefully we'll get an EnGenius bridge, something I actually need and can test compared to this AliExpress level of wireless bridge I'm using now, which is working. It's getting the job done. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to broadcast if not for that bridge. I would just like something better. Andy Kane wants to know, what air cooler do I think is suitable for the 7700? Well, there's a 7700 and a 7700. Require two different coolers. If you're going to be stuck with an air cooler, probably the Noctua DH15, some big, massive, ugly thing is likely what you're going to need on a CPU of that caliber. It's sort of like buying a Ferrari and asking how you're going to get 30 miles to the gallon out of it. You're not. When you buy a CPU of that caliber, it's going to consume more power. It's going to generate more heat if you're using it to that caliber. And so you need an equivalent heat sink to be able to stave that off. And ideally, to avoid a big, ugly air cooler, I would put on a liquid cooler. It'd be far better for that caliber of CPU, in my opinion. This is a 9900 KS CPU in there. That thing gets really, really hot. And there's a reason why we didn't put an air cooler in there. When you're going to that level, when you're going to spend that kind of money, it just doesn't make sense to do air cooling unless you don't care about how it looks. And most people who spend that kind of money care about how it looks. Because if we put a Noctua DH15 in there, you won't see anything but the top of the cooler. You won't see any RGB. You won't see the RAM. You won't see nothing but the video card. That's it. What a waste. Jim says 5.4 single core is the spec. Well, I mean, if you got it running at spec, that's great. Then no harm. It just sounded to me like you bought this really fast processor and you made it slower so you wouldn't overheat to use the cooler you already had. It's sort of like, well, why didn't you just save money and buy the next step down in the CPU? Or if you were going to go to that level of CPU, why not spend the extra money to properly cool it so you can use it the way it's intended to be used? But I guess as long as you're getting the spec out of it, whatever works, man. Simo said the 7700 is 65 watt TDP and the included cooler is good enough. Well, they're not going to include a cooler that's not good enough. So usually like the K processors from Intel and the X processors from AMD are enthusiast level, and you're supposed to provide your own cooler. You're not supposed to ask, what cooler should I buy? If you're buying an X or a K processor, you're supposed to have the knowledge to know what you're doing. If you don't have that knowledge, then you should be buying the non-X or the non-K versions that come with coolers and just use the included coolers. But you should pick your lane. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you buy an enthusiast level that requires this level of knowledge to install and operate correctly, to keep it properly cooled, and then turn around and have no idea how to cool it? You shouldn't have bought that. You should have bought the one that came with the cooler. Then you wouldn't be in this quandary. You'd, and especially if the reason you want to reuse your old coolers, you don't have the money to pay for the proper cooler. The version that comes with the cooler is cheaper. But to each his own. Do what you're going to do. Matt Soloff says he feels invisible today. I'm sorry, Matt Soloff. This is the first I've seen you in the chat. It's always good to see you, my friend. I have not been intentionally ignoring you. I just haven't seen you in there till now. But glad you joined us today. Matt Soloff joins us all the way from Sweden. Kelly Stewart said, here's a little bit of my equipment. He's got a Tow-Link Armada AC13. I think he means TP-Link Armada AC1350 OC200 ER605 and a Netgear WAX214 100 NAS with a PoE 24 socket router. That's not a router, that would be a switch. Also, it all works together. I would hope so. Bagman said, someday I'm going to upgrade my cooler on my Intel 10700 so I can get the full rated speed. Though this Arctic Freezer 7XI, I guess, isn't too bad. I can usually hit 4.7 gig max rated speed at 4.8. What do you use your computer for that a 100 megahertz difference makes a difference in your world? That's what I'm curious about. Like, what the heck are you using your computer for? Are you just chasing after benchmark numbers? Or do you have a real practical need for that? And if so, what is it? Because I'd like to know what the heck are these people doing? I've been in this business a long time, and it's pretty rare I encounter anybody that gets to that granular of a level that it matters outside of hobbyists and enthusiasts that don't really have any real reason for doing it other than they just want to see certain numbers when they run tests. So I'm genuinely curious what justifies chasing that and spending that money. Gaming, video watching. So video watching is nothing. Light video editing is nothing. Web browsing, nothing. So you don't really have any reason for that. I don't think it's going to make any difference on your gaming. That's mostly going to be relative to the graphics card you put in. So I think you're just chasing numbers. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just trying to understand what justifies it. And, just because I want to, that's a real justification. But that doesn't work in business. I don't get to propose an upgrade that the company should invest in without explaining what the return on that investment would be, because they're likely not going to approve it unless I can justify the return on the investment. So again, very different worlds between home users and businesses. Businesses is about profit. Businesses, it's about not spending money they don't have to spend and getting the best bang for their buck on all the networking equipment for security, reliability, support. And if they have to spend a little bit more to get that level of peace of mind and insurance, they won't hesitate. Whereas home users might cut corners, and who cares, right? Because it doesn't impact anybody but them. But when these home users are making YouTube videos and they're explaining it to other viewers that are watching YouTube videos, they might get to think that that's normal. It's not. That's all. It's like children playing versus adults working. And, there's nothing wrong with children playing. It's fine. Play. Have fun. If you have the time and you have the money and you can afford that, have fun. But in business, time is money. And so we're always focused on what can make the business more productive, what can make the business more secure, and ways that we can grow the business in different areas where the business might be able to grow, where the IT department is involved with potential service providing to their clients, depending on what the business is in business to do. So in any event, that's why I make the videos I make, is to counter all of the home enthusiast videos, which saturate YouTube in this tech arena. There's just not enough professionals out there sharing practical real world advice and explaining the difference. So the home users at the very least understand the difference between what they're watching, to give it proper context. That's all. I don't suggest one is better than the other. What I'm suggesting is that one is so oversaturated on YouTube that a regular viewer would never know the other side of the coin even existed. That's all. That's all I'm trying to do, is raise awareness. Take a look at the other side of the coin. Give you some perspective. That's all. Some people have mentioned buffering, but I have not buffered on this side. My OBS has been absolutely perfect this whole stream. I've not had any drop frames, nothing. So I don't know what's going on over there. Whether it's YouTube servers or it's your ISP, I can't say. But I can tell you here on our side, solid connection today. In fact, I should probably quit while I'm ahead, because if I keep going, I'm sure it's just a matter of time before my signal will drop, which it's been doing.
We need a new rule.
What's that?
3 products only in the one video.
It's a lot of tags.
That's it. Wow, that was painful.
It's a lot of work. All right.
Yeah.
You want to say goodbye? All right, we're going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for all your contributions and your support, all my friends in blue. Thanks to Camera Girl for
Hi, everybody.
the thumbnails and
Hope you enjoyed. This is neat, huh? Yeah.
That's
3 products. That's it. That was painful. Bye.
Back to work. Thanks to EnGenius for sending the products, and thanks to all of you for hanging out with me today. I don't know if I'm live tomorrow or not, but do stay subscribed to the channel to get those notifications. For example, if you were subscribed, you would have received a notification last night about today's video. So otherwise, if you just want to check the channel at 1 p.m. Pacific time or a little after, you'll see if I'm live. If I'm live, I'm usually live at 1 p.m. Pacific time. But I'm just not sure yet what the plans for tomorrow are. That'll wrap it up for me for today. Thanks to all of you once again. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until next time. Bye for now.